Genshin's progression system sucks. And no, I don't mean that in the sense that gacha is bad and you have to actively pull for characters to get them. I mean that the way in which you build up your account is bad. But why is that? Why does a game that has so many options for you to build up your accounts, from talents to weapons to levels, constellations, and team building, have such a poor leveling system? And why does the progression you make and the progress and power you actively feel as you get stronger and as you play more feel like it hits a wall towards the end? I'm going to highlight 3 separate things that I think really should affect your progression in terms of your account, your character's power, and could dramatically improve the player experience. We'll go over exploration, actual farming for dedicated units, and story. Exploration is pretty simple. Genshin is a massive game. Whether you've 100%ed every area or you've barely touched it, it doesn't really matter. I think the exploration in this game is fun, but I personally love it. I do think that they improved it dramatically when they added the little areas that can give you rewards, such as the R&R Tree of Dreams, or Inazuma's Sacred Sakura Tree. These systems incentivize exploration for your account because you dramatically boost your progress via the rewards you gain, from Mora to XP to wishes to fragile resin, talent books. All of that gives you a reason to go from level 1 to level 50 outside of the teapot rewards, which realistically many of you aren't actively going to use. Everything else you get is pretty good. Crowns allow you to crown your favorite characters to reach their maximum talent potential. Talent books, that may help you on saving resin, and sure, the actual fragile resin may be more useful, but all of these materials are worthwhile to get. But outside of these systems, outside of the reward-based ones in Inazuma, Sumeru, Fontaine, and even the giant section of Sumeru that was added with the Emerita, outside of any of these, does anyone have a legitimate reason to go back to Mons, to go back to Dragonspine or Liyue? Because none of those have their own separate system. The Crimson Agate level up the Frostbearing Tree, which has rewards, but the chests on Dragonspine, they don't do anything for you. I feel like if you're going to reward players and want to incentivize them to explore, you need to fill something in those chests. An example is, if we're looking at even just a low rarity example, a lot of individuals threw away their White Tassel. It was a 3-star weapon that's only contained within chests. Same with the Halberd. Both of these are decent weapons when you have no other option, but exploration doesn't reward you with much in this game. Yes, you get gems, yes, you get the occasional furnishing, yes, you get Mora, but that's not enough to give players a reason to say, I want to climb that mountain. If you're a Eula main, then you may know that on one mountaintop or multiple chests, you can find the Skyrider Greatsword, which isn't that bad of a weapon for her. But once you have anything else better, Luxurious Sea Lord, Akuamaru, Serpent Spine, the Ultimate Overlord's Mega Magic Sword, or any 5-star, it kind of becomes a moot point. So if exploration is bad and nobody has an active reason to go back and to explore old regions, why would you? Other than if you're a completionist like myself, other than if you want the achievements like myself, there is none. Exploration in Genshin, despite being fun, despite you having an entire region to explore, from mountaintops to the ocean itself in Fontaine, you have so much you can do, but there's no real reason to do it. You don't get any individual currency. The sigils themselves are only useful in a certain subsection of lands, and after a certain point, they just give you furnishings, which many people will not use. The main things people care about, Mora, XP, and fragile resin, aren't given out to you freely. Mora is given out to you in chests, experience books are a scarce resource, and fragile resin is only given out here and there. So you have no reason to go back to Mondstadt and Fontaine once you've explored them, or Mondstadt and Liyue, or even the Chasm. I think Dragonspine is a prime example of this. It's an albedo-centric region, but nobody has a reason to actively explore this place. It's cold. Sheer cold will slowly kill you if you aren't careful. Exploration is tricky because it's such a mountainous area, even more so than Liyue. There's the inner caves, the outer caves, the mountaintops and the peaks, especially if you want to collect those Crimson Agates, and there's nothing of substance here. At least nothing of substance anymore. A lot of you may not remember this, but Dragonspine was host to 2 unique things. First, you got a free 4-star weapon for fully exploring the land itself and opening up essentially a hinted ad secret. It gave you a nice chest, a Crimson Agate, and Snow Tomb Star Silver. Now, whether or not you use this weapon doesn't matter. What matters is it was free. It rewarded you for exploration. This was good. Whether or not the weapon itself is used by you, it is still a good thing. And then second, Boar, and Boar. The Boar King. Many of you do not go back and fight this boss. And by most standards, it's not really a hard boss to this day. But what matters is it was a secret boss. Yes, it was theoretically hinted at in a couple side quests, and yeah, you did have one to kill it, but for the vast majority of people who didn't do that quest line, for the vast majority of people who didn't care, this is a secret boss prior to Fontaine. Fontaine has local legends, and yeah, you can get stomped by them, but there's no prerequisite requirements to unlock them. You can come across them in the world. Dragonspine not only had your first free 4-star weapon that you got from exploration, but also a side boss that only rewarded you with meat once you killed it. And as I said here, yeah, it's not exactly a hard boss, but what matters is it is a secret. What matters is it's there, it adds some flair, and whether or not you choose to actively do it, it's at least something that's not featured in other nations. So if they wanted to improve exploration, Aside from the trees and things they do, they can actively give you a reason to explore. They can say hide a random deathmatch in exploration. For all the individuals who don't purchase the battle pass, this is a great option. They can give some of the random rewards. Maybe if you explore Dragon Spine fully, you get Cinnabar Spindle because you missed it in the event. Or if you already have it, maybe you get a refinement copy for any other weapon in your inventory. Any other 4-star or 5-star. Can be anything, really. Passing out previous event weapons that you can't get anymore is nice. Passing out battle pass weapons is also nice. Even the limited 4-stars that appear on weapon banners only would be a neat thing. Incentivize players to explore. That's essentially what I'm getting at here. But exploration's only one piece of the puzzle. What about the story? Genshin Impact has a lot of story cutscenes, and a lot of them are very unique. And I do think they're nicely animated for cinematics that you only get to see one. I especially love every cinematic from Liyue, but that's my favorite region, alongside Inazuma. I think that the story of Genshin, at least when they actively know how to keep it clear and concise, is fine. Whilst I may hate Sumeru's story, overall, I can at least appreciate what they tried to do. I think making the story take you to different sections of the land and slowly revealing out, oh, there's an underwater section here, oh, there's a cave here, is nice. And I do like the way they've integrated the cast of characters into more and more story-focused scenes. That, in my opinion, is a plus. However, the only downside is, the story gives you essentially these 5-star items from each and every nation, and yeah, they're neat, but they don't do anything for you. I think this story needs to primarily focus on one thing at the end of each section or at the end of each Archon questline. A free weapon. I think the Favonius Warbow you got from Venti's questline was nice, because a lot of us still use this weapon. It's a great weapon. But why not instead give us a free 4-star that is correlated to the Archon's weapon? Venti uses a bow. We get a free Favonius Warbow. Zhongli uses a spear. Maybe you get a free Favonius Land. Or maybe you get a free Lithic weapon because he's a Liyue-based character. Raiden uses a spear. The catch worked perfect. Give us R1 for free, and then you have to fish for R4 and R5. That's fine. Farina uses a sword. Give us any free sword. Any of them. Favonius sword. Worked perfectly fine. Nahida uses a catalyst, sacrificial fragment. Would have worked wonderful. Widsith, the same. Incentivize players by giving them a free weapon at the end of major quest lines, because yes, the primos are nice, but I think giving characters a weapon that relates to them for free would work wonders for making people actually want to do the story, because hey, maybe it's free to play, and maybe at the end of the next Archon quest you get a nice alley hunt, or maybe a rust for Yoimiya. But then there's the side issue. Kazuha. A lot of you like him, I hate him. But out of every character in the game, he's the only one who had a free weapon at the end of his character quest. This was not an Archon quest, this was not an event, this is something you could actively do at any point in time with the story keys you get. So, since we're on the topic, story quests, you can unlock a variety of these. And I haven't done many of them for the characters I don't like, but I do want to do Lenny's. Why is it that none of these give you anything worthwhile at the end of it? The hangouts, yeah, they give you primo gems, and yeah, you can do them at any point in time. And yeah, maybe you have a favorite character who's a 4-star that you really want to do, and so you do the hangout, and you get all the reward. These at least are valuable to you. Maybe not the meals, but the primos, the XP, the talent books, those are all nice, and these assist in raising the characters. You get Jade Chunks for Chongyun's quest. Why? Because these can be used to raise Chongyun. That makes sense. But for the 5-stars, you don't get anything of value. You get the basic mats, but Kazuha is the only one who gave you a weapon. Why not have Albedo's give you Cinnabar Spindle as a nice way to say, hey, you missed the event, take this event weapon. It would be a really nice way to incentivize players to actively go back. Zhao's story quest. During that quest line, you got to play as Zhao for the first time. Nice, great, but his kit was entirely different because he regenerated HP every time he did a plunge attack. Why isn't that in the base game now? I don't know. You have no real reason to go back and do other characters' quest lines if you don't like them. The story quests don't mean anything to you. The only ones you have to do are the Archons because they give you a weekly boss at the end of it, which is perfectly fine. So if exploration doesn't do anything, and the story doesn't give you anything, and the character questlines don't give you anything, then that leaves only one thing: farming. Artifact farming sucks. You don't need me to tell you this, and I won't ramble on too much about it. It's awful. I love farming, but I understand why so many individuals hate it. There's an intense anticipation when you get a double crit artifact or something with all the stats that you want, whether it's elemental mastery and energy recharge or just attack percentage. That anticipation builds with rolling that artifact, and if it rolls great, you're excited, but when it doesn't, you are immediately let down. And as a progression standpoint, from the point of progressing your characters and improving your account, it sucks because there is no real way you as a player can dictate how this goes. Lowering your standards or raising them doesn't matter because at the end of the day, it is RNG as to what artifact you will get, and HSR is not better than this in the slightest. Both have the exact same artifact system. The only difference is in Genshin you have an off-piece you can utilize, and HSR you don't. Player agency matters, the concept that a player can actively choose and decide what to do going forward. People like being able to control their progression, whether they choose to level up a character, focus on the ascension mats for later on, maybe they go on their talents, maybe they go for their weapon, that all is important. But the main thing that primarily decides your damage output, your healing output, or whatever the case may be for an individual character is your artifacts. A character can be 90 out of 90, but if they have no artifacts on them, they will die because they don't have the HP the artifact grants. You can have a character with a lot of constellations, but that character may not deal damage if they don't have any crit built into them because of their artifacts. This means that most of your account progression is locked behind an RNG based system. Yes, the primary standpoint is focus on ascension and levels first, and then your talents and your weapon, and then your artifacts last. But from the standpoint of any individual who's played this game the longest, your artifacts matter so much more. If you're doing transformative reactions, elemental mastery and your artifacts matter a lot. If you're a DPS, crit rate and crit damage matter a lot alongside attack percent, HP, energy recharge, etc. And because we don't have any individual unit to buff crit to the extent to where you can ignore artifacts for a little while longer, you are kind of stuck in this position to where yes, you can focus on the other attributes, but eventually you will be stuck in an artifact farming loop. And if you're like me and you enjoy it, I understand that. I get that. That's perfectly fine. But I can also see where the vast majority of players fall off because it feels like you aren't making any consistent progress. And the progress you do make, it doesn't feel impactful enough because you have no way of visually seeing that. I think all of us can immediately see when your character is maxed out at 90 out of 90 and talent level 10, 10, 10. At that point, you see it, you're like, oh, they're maxed, they've reached their full potential. The next thing would be like constellations, but that's an iffy thing that many of us don't consider. And so with that being said, your artifacts, while mattering, aren't necessarily seen as easily because they don't really show anything in the stat sheet unless you look at the details. Nobody looks at a character and immediately sees plus 20 artifacts and it's like, oh, they're built. You have to look at the individual stats. You can't necessarily see the difference in your character while playing them with their artifacts. You can with their talents, with their level, with everything else. And so, as much as artifacts matter, as much as they are incentivized to farm them, you don't have any visual representation or any feedback for your character's strength beyond, did they hit a bigger number or no? Did they heal more or no? Can they survive longer or no? And this matters in terms of the Abyss because you're based on time, and your time, how much you have left over can be based on how much damage you did. But outside of that, it doesn't hold any weight. And the problem with that is, if you're farming and grinding endlessly for the Abyss and you clear the Abyss, you have no reason to farm. If you're farming and grinding endlessly and you can't clear the Abyss, you feel like you can't control your progress, so you stop caring. So I want to leave this up to all of you who've sat through this video. If you continued, subscribe, by the way, maybe join the channel. But how would you fix this system? I think artifact farming does work conceptually. I just think the lack of control we have, or even the lack of options we have to narrow down what we may get, is the issue. If you could run into a domain, so just emblem in this instance, and hypothetically say, I only want energy recharge and attack sands, even if it theoretically lowers the amount of artifacts you may get, but it increases the amount of artifacts of a specific type you get, such as energy recharge sands, I think people would be willing to do that. The same goes for goblets. We all hate farming goblets because they're usually your worst pieces. But if you could say, walk into someone like the Shimanawers or Crimson Witch of Flames domain and say, I only want HP goblets or I only want pyro damage goblets, people would be willing to farm more because you have more control. But as it stands, we don't. And as it stands, Genshin Impact hasn't really given you an incentive to build more than what you need. Once you're set, you're set. And until the damage ceiling and the damage floor needed to clear Abyss raises, if you even care, you don't need to do anything else. So I'm hoping Genshin adds more progression systems. I'm hoping Genshin improves its progression systems. We've been getting a lot of milestones and a lot of quality of life changes, but I'm hoping this is one of them. Tell me yours down below, what you want and what you would ideally do to fix the current system we have in the game. Subscribe, and I'll see you next time.